And it could create, in the next couple of years, maybe even sooner, a worldwide deflationary depression. And so they're all in the soup. And the situation, even though it's of greater magnitude, is just as bad in the United States and Great Britain as it is in some of the other countries I've just mentioned. They're all broke. This is what the problem is. And who's to blame? The central banks. In the case of the United States, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the Bank of Spain, and the Bank of Greece, because they let these things happen. And, of course, the politicians that vote for more and more deficit spending. I mean, just look at the U.S. government. We don't know what the number's going to be for September at the end of the fiscal year. I'm guessing at $1.8 trillion in deficit just for 1 year. And they're talking about deficits for the next 9 years of over $1 trillion a year. And you know, with government, you can always double the figure. And so the whole thing is insanity. And so the world's going down. And that's why over the last 5 years since I've come on this program, I tell everybody, gold and silver coins and shares, that's it.
And we've heard it. We've heard it all the time. I can vouch for that 100%. Betty in California comes in, Mr. Chapman, out here this morning, our time. We heard that Goldman Sachs owner or CEO made a comment before Congress, quoting, "We have been a client-centered firm for over 140 years, and if our clients believe that we don't deserve their trust, we cannot survive." Mr. Chapman, those are his words, not mine, and he's been lying, as well as people at Goldman Sachs have been lying for us for over 18 months. Mr. Lloyd Blankfein feels that Goldman Sachs is being honest, and he's got another thing coming. To me, he's placed a noose around his neck. Do you think Goldman Sachs can make it through the year?
Maybe. It's hard to say. I do know that, I'll tell you the story, my take on it, as to what's going on. First of all, they were in the process of being sued by people for the things that you've seen on radio and television and the print media. And they knew that they had serious problems. The AG from Connecticut had sued the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. And they were in league with Goldman and others in setting AAA ratings on bonds that were BBB. Big difference. And so what did they do? They lied about it. And they sold all this garbage to professional investors. And, of course, there are those who say, well, they should have known and they shouldn't have bought it. Well, they do have a point there. But when you're dealing with a 140-year-old firm that has a big reputation, you don't think that they're lying to you. So people didn't check as closely as they should have. So anyway, we got these lawsuits coming. And Goldman Sachs is scared to death they're going to be charged criminally. So what they did, they made a deal with the SEC, charge us civilly so we don't go to jail. And, of course, if the administration does that, and the SEC, being a government agency, is part of the administration, if they do that, that gets them at Goldman off the hook, and they'll probably pay a large fine, maybe $1 billion, $5 billion, chump change to these people. This is what they're looking for. Whether they'll get that, because there may be criminal charges brought against them by AGs from the states. We don't know how this is going to work out yet. But they went civil on it via the SEC to keep them out of jail, number one. Number two, while all this is going on, the Congress, especially the Senate, is trying to pass legislation for financial reform, which is nothing more than making the privately owned Federal Reserve into a tyrannical monster. They want to nationalize all the banks, or what's left of them by the time they get through with them over the next 2 years. They want to encompass under the Federal Reserve the SEC, Commodity Futures Trading Corporation, which is called CFTC, the FDIC, which is insures accounts, a new consumer agency, and there's another agency they created. It's just a whole plethora of things in the hands of the people who are in league with the banks, who are in league with the brokerage firms, the Federal Reserve. They want to give this all to them, and they engineered this whole mess in the first place. And that's why they wanted a diversion, and that's why they brought the action against Goldman at this particular time. So people will be looking at Goldman and all those problems and not looking at what that scumbag Senator Dodd has been doing. He's not running for re-election. He's been paid off enough so he doesn't have to, just like his father was paid off. And so that was one of the reasons. The other reason is they wanted to make the administration look good so the Democrats would have an easier time getting reelected. And so we have a number of reasons as to why this is going on.
In your newsletter, you wrote about a new law where the Fed would take control of all financial entities. Could you elaborate on this for us today?
Well, that's what I was talking about a minute ago, and I don't have the information in front of me. You do. And I write so much I can't keep up with it all. But they want to make it into, like they did in the legislation that we just saw passed for medical reform. They want to make it a giant thing. And like the new medical will encompass everything. The HMOs, the hospital syndicates, the doctors, who's going to get treated, what it's going to cost, and of course it's going to lose trillions of dollars every year. And they want to do the same thing with finance. The reason they want to is that America has a corporatist, fascist government. Fascism is a form of socialism. We best know it from the 1920s and 30s and 40s as promulgated and put into action by Benito Mussolini as well as Adolf Hitler. This is what they're feeding us in America. This is what they're up to. And within that structure, you monopolize every industry. Well, they just monopolized healthcare, which is 23% of GDP. Then they're going to do the financial sector, which is probably about 30% of GDP. That's half the economy. And then they'll monopolize what's left of the manufacturing industries, and then they'll monopolize everything else. And we'll have it just like Nazi Germany. And this is what these people are after. And when they get all that done, they want world government, where you lose your sovereignty, you use a one world currency, all the things you do are directed by this one world order. And you don't have any say about anything.
Mr. Chapman, where was that question? Let's see here. Hello, Drew. Goldman pressed for a CDO loss settlement. Could you explain what that is for us that are unknowledgeable in this?
Press for a CDO what?
Loss settlement.
Okay. I'm guessing here, but it'll be a pretty good guess. CDOs are collateralized debt obligations. They are bonds. And inside those bonds, there are mortgages or pieces of mortgages, which they call tranches. So you may have 10,000 loans inside of one bond, and you'll have maybe 1/3 of them, you'll have the principal, and 1/3 of them you may just have interest, and 1/3 you may have a combination of both. So they chop these mortgages up. And I'll tell you, the problem they've got now, which is aside from what we're talking about, is that none of these people, organizations, companies, can prove that they own these mortgages because the system is so screwed up